In the heart of California's calm, the most brutal crimes were born. Boutique stores drenched in blood, freeway shoulders turned into graveyards, suburban homes shattered by screams, courtrooms echoing with verdicts of death. Each scene is a reminder: peace is fragile, danger relentless. And this is Inside California's Most Notorious Black Killers Vertical Bar, Shocking Murders, and True Crime Documentary. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Shawn Laval Smith. They took her life in broad daylight, inside a store where she thought she was safe. And what happened next revealed the terrifying reality of random violence in America. Shawn Laval Smith was 31 years old and homeless, with a violent criminal history spanning 2 states. He had previously been arrested for firing a flare gun at a vehicle with a child inside. But on the 13th of January 2022, he committed a crime that would draw national outrage. His victim was Brianna Kupfer, a 24-year-old UCLA graduate student working at a boutique furniture store in Hancock Park. That afternoon, she texted a friend, "A guy in the store is giving me bad vibes." Minutes later, she was dead. Smith had entered the store under the guise of a customer. Once alone with her, he stabbed Brianna 46 times. Some wounds were so deep they pierced her lungs, stomach, and liver. The murder weapon, a knife with a bent blade, was left at the scene, along with a digital recorder. On it, Smith could allegedly be heard ranting about his hatred for women. Investigators called it a targeted act of hate. Surveillance footage showed Smith casually walking into a nearby 7-Eleven after the killing. A customer discovered Brianna's body roughly 20 minutes later. The city responded with urgency. A $250,000 reward was posted, and a multi-agency manhunt began. 6 days later, Smith was arrested in Pasadena. Prosecutors charged him with first-degree murder, with the special circumstance of lying in wait. During trial, they presented damning forensic evidence: Smith's DNA on the knife, its sheath, and the recorder. His defense admitted guilt but tried to argue the murder was spontaneous, not premeditated. But jurors disagreed. On the 10th of September 2024, after a 2-week trial, they found Smith guilty. He was also found to have been legally sane at the time. On October 2, Judge Mildred Escobedo sentenced him to life in prison without parole, plus an additional year for the use of a deadly weapon. As the sentence was read, Smith sat emotionless, showing no visible remorse. In contrast, Brianna's family, who had left the courtroom during the audio playback of her murder, later issued a statement: "Justice will never be served because our daughter's not alive." They established the Brianna Kupfer Foundation to support victims of violence against women. The case ignited national conversation about rising urban crime, the failures of the bail system, and the vulnerability of women working alone. It also underscored how random violence often hides calculated intent. From this tragedy come hard lessons: trust your instincts. Brianna sensed something was wrong, but it was already too late. Workplace safety matters. Never leave staff alone in customer-facing roles. The justice system must track repeat offenders. Smith had already shown violent tendencies. Her story ended far too soon, but the message echoes on. Even in the safest neighborhoods, danger can walk right through the front door. Let Brianna's memory remind us: awareness can't prevent every crime, but silence never saves lives. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press HIP8, stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2. Rockim Prowell. 3 men thought they were meeting a date. Instead, they met violence, deception, and a suspect facing California's harshest charges. Rockim Prowell, a 34-year-old man from Inglewood, California, has been charged with crimes that prosecutors describe as predatory and chilling. Known previously for a string of burglaries between 2019 and 2021, he had a reputation for unusual disguises. During those crimes, authorities say he wore a prosthetic mask and wig to appear as a white man, evading suspicion. At the time of his September 2025 arrest, he was already on probation. But the accusations now against him are far darker than theft. According to prosecutors, Prowell used an online dating application to lure men. He allegedly committed 2 murders and 1 attempted murder over the span of 4 years. The first case dates back to the 20th of July 2021, when 51-year-old Miguel Angel King arranged a meeting. Hours later, King was fatally shot, and his car was stolen. Weeks afterward, his remains were discovered in the Angeles National Forest. Forensic testing on his vehicle would later tie Prowell to the killing. On the 21st of August 2023, another man, 53-year-old Robert Gutierrez, disappeared after meeting Prowell through the same platform. His family reported him missing within 2 days. His body has never been located, but investigators discovered his car in Prowell's garage after his 2025 arrest, adding weight to the allegations of a second murder. The third case unfolded on the 22nd of February 2025, when a 40-year-old man narrowly escaped with his life. Prosecutors alleged that Prowell bound him, beat him with a baseball bat, and stole his wallet. The victim managed to escape, even after being struck by a vehicle in a pursuit that left him with a broken leg. His testimony now plays a critical role in the state's case. On the 8th of September 2025, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office formally announced charges: 2 counts of murder with the special circumstance of multiple victims, 1 count of attempted murder, 2 counts of carjacking, 2 counts of second-degree burglary, and 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. Prowell appeared in court at the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center, standing silently as prosecutors read the charges. If convicted, he faces life in prison without the possibility of parole or a potential death sentence. He remains in custody, with conflicting reports on whether he is held without bail or on $2 million bail. The brutality of the allegations has shaken Los Angeles and attracted national attention. The case underscores how digital platforms can become tools for predation. Though Prowell is presumed innocent until proven guilty, prosecutors argue the evidence reveals calculated planning and deliberate deception. From this disturbing case, 3 lessons emerge. Always treat first meetings with strangers cautiously, share plans with trusted contacts, and never ignore red flags in behavior. Awareness is often the only protection when predators hide behind digital screens. Technology promises connection, but unchecked trust can be deadly. Safety begins with vigilance, because one ignored warning may cost everything. Number 3. Nicole Lorraine Linton. She was a nurse trained to save lives. But one afternoon, her actions at a busy Los Angeles intersection ended 6 of them. Nicole Lorraine Linton, a 37-year-old traveling ICU nurse from Houston, Texas, became the focus of one of California's most shocking vehicular homicide cases. On the 4th of August 2022, her Mercedes-Benz barreled through a red light at La Brea and Slauson Avenues in Windsor Hills at an estimated speed of 90 to 130 miles per hour. The crash was catastrophic. Cars erupted into flames, one was torn in half, and victims were thrown from their vehicles. A California Highway Patrol officer said the scene looked like a war zone. The dead included 3-year-old Ashery Ryan, who was 8.5 months pregnant, her unborn son Armani Lester, her 1-month-old child Alonzo, and her boyfriend Reynold Lester, a 4-year-old security guard. Also killed were 3-year-old Nathesia Lewis and 8-year-old Lynette Noble. At least 8 others were injured. The community later called them the Slauson Six. Prosecutors filed 6 counts of murder and 5 counts of vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence. One murder charge was specifically for the unborn child. District Attorney George Gascon told the public Linton was a ticking time bomb who ignored her history of prior crashes and mental health issues. They argued she drove with implied malice, knowing the danger yet choosing to act. The investigation uncovered disturbing details. Linton had a record of at least 13 previous accidents. She had bipolar disorder, prior psychiatric hospitalizations, and, according to prosecutors, had stopped taking prescribed medication. Days before the crash, her internet searches included, "Can you see your death coming?" Defense attorneys countered that this was a tragic accident, suggesting a seizure may have caused her to lose control. But medical tests showed no seizure activity. At her first court appearance, she arrived in a wheelchair. By August 2024, after a lengthy preliminary hearing, a judge ordered her to stand trial. On the 8th of November 2024, she pleaded not guilty to all charges in Los Angeles County Superior Court. If convicted, she faces up to 90 years to life in prison. Her demeanor in court was subdued, her eyes cast downward as the charges were read. She has remained in custody without bail. Families of the victims, meanwhile, voiced anguish. The tragedy reverberated far beyond Los Angeles. Surveillance footage of the crash went viral across social media, fueling outrage and sorrow worldwide. A memorial bench and community garden now honor the victims, serving as a reminder of lives lost in seconds. The case leaves behind urgent lessons. First, untreated mental illness combined with reckless choices can be devastating. Second, vehicles in the wrong hands become weapons capable of mass tragedy. Third, awareness of red flags, force from past accidents to online searches, must not be ignored. Her trial is still pending, but the message is clear: responsibility on the road is not optional. In the end, one decision, one moment of disregard, can erase entire families and leave communities searching for answers that never come. Number 4. Orenthal James Simpson. He was a football hero, a Hollywood star, and a man once adored across America. But one night in 1994 would change everything. Orenthal James Simpson, known worldwide as O.J., or The Juice, rose from a childhood in San Francisco's housing projects to fame as one of the NFL's brightest stars. He broke records, won the Heisman Trophy, and entered the Hall of Fame. He became a familiar face in commercials and movies, his charisma crossing racial lines in ways few black celebrities had before. Yet, his legacy was forever redefined when he stood accused of double murder. On the 12th of June 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson, his ex-wife, and her friend, Ronald Goldman, were brutally stabbed to death outside her Brentwood condominium. Simpson was in Chicago that night, but evidence quickly drew suspicion. 5 days later, the world watched live as he fled police in a white Ford Bronco, trailed in a low-speed chase seen by 95 million Americans. The trial began in January 1995. Prosecutors framed Simpson as a jealous, violent ex-husband. The defense countered with allegations of police racism and mishandled DNA evidence, targeting Detective Mark Furman's credibility. The trial's turning point came when Simpson was asked to try on the bloody gloves recovered at the crime scene. They appeared too small. On the 3rd of October 1995, after less than 4 hours of jury deliberation, Simpson was acquitted. He stood calm, eyes fixed downward, as the verdict was read. Outside the courtroom, reactions split sharply along racial lines. To many, it was justice against a biased system. To others, it was proof that celebrities could outmaneuver accountability. The civil court delivered a different outcome. In 1997, a jury found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, awarding $33.5 million to the families. Ron Goldman's father, Fred Goldman, said afterward, "This was never about money. It was always about responsibility." Years later, Simpson's freedom ended again. In 2007, he led a group of men into a Las Vegas hotel room to retrieve sports memorabilia he claimed was stolen. Armed with at least one gun, the confrontation turned into a robbery case. In 2008, Simpson was convicted on 12 counts, including armed robbery and kidnapping. At sentencing, the judge noted the reckless violence and imposed up to 33 years in prison. After serving 9, Simpson was granted parole in 2017. His death from prostate cancer in April 2024 closed the chapter on a man who symbolized both American triumph and scandal. Reactions were blunt. Gloria Allred, attorney for the Brown family, said his death was a reminder that the justice system failed abused women. From this case come urgent lessons. Domestic violence ignored can escalate into tragedy. Fame must never shield accountability, and public spectacle often distorts justice itself. O.J. Simpson's life story is both legend and warning, proof that one man can be celebrated and condemned, often for the same reasons. Number 5. Lovelle Mixon. On a spring afternoon in Oakland, a routine traffic stop spiraled into one of the deadliest days in California law enforcement history. Lovelle Shawn Mixon was a 26-year-old parolee with a long record of violence. Born in San Francisco, he grew up surrounded by crime and entered the justice system at age 13. By 2009, he was wanted on a no-bail warrant for a parole violation. Police also suspected him in the rape of a 12-year-old girl, and on the morning of the 21st of March 2009, investigators say he robbed and raped 2 women at gunpoint. Facing a likely life sentence if caught, he was determined never to return to prison. At 1:08 p.m., Oakland Motorcycle Sergeant Mark Dunican and Officer John Hagee pulled Mixon over on MacArthur Boulevard for a traffic violation. When they attempted an arrest, Mixon drew a semi-automatic pistol and opened fire. Both officers were struck, and as they lay wounded, he approached and shot them execution-style in the back before fleeing on foot. The attack stunned witnesses and triggered a manhunt involving more than 200 officers. Police soon received a tip that Mixon was hiding in his sister's apartment on 74th Avenue. At 3:02 p.m., a hastily assembled SWAT team stormed the building. Mixon was waiting inside a dark closet, armed with an SKS assault rifle. He fired through the walls and door, fatally hitting Sergeant Irvin Romans and seriously wounding Sergeant Pat Gonzalez. As the chaos unfolded, he shot and killed Sergeant Daniel Sakai. Officers returned fire, and by 3:20 p.m., Mixon was dead. The brutality left Oakland reeling. Sergeant Dunican was 40, Officer Hagee was 41, Sergeant Romans was 43, and Sergeant Sakai was 35. Four families lost husbands, fathers, and sons in a single afternoon. The investigation revealed that Mixon's motive went far beyond a traffic stop. DNA evidence tied him to the assault of a 12-year-old and two women just hours earlier. Officials concluded he ambushed police in desperation, knowing a rape conviction would send him away for life. The response divided the community. While 21,000 mourners, including officers from across the nation, attended the public funeral, some activist groups held vigils supporting Mixon, framing him as a product of systemic injustice. Others condemned the violence and honored the fallen officers as heroes. Oakland athletics players wore OPD patches for the rest of the season, while a highway bridge was renamed in memory of the four slain officers. A scathing independent review criticized police tactics, citing flaws in the traffic stop, poor command control, and rushing into the apartment without adequate planning. From this case come sobering reminders. Even minor stops can escalate when desperation meets violence. Public safety depends on procedure as much as bravery, and ignoring early signs of predatory crime allows danger to escalate unchecked. In the end, one man's refusal to face justice left 4 officers dead and an entire city forever scarred. Number 6. Smiley Martin. Downtown Sacramento was alive with music and crowds leaving nightclubs. Within minutes, that energy was drowned out by chaos, gunfire, and screams. Smiley Allen Martin, a 27-year-old man from Phoenix with a history of violence, stood at the center of what police called the worst mass shooting in Sacramento's history. His criminal past stretched back to 2014 Arizona. By 2018, he was serving 10 years in California for domestic violence, but was released early in February 2022 for good behavior. 2 months later, he was back on the streets and back in trouble. In the early hours of the 3rd of April 2022, a fight broke out in downtown Sacramento, just as bars were closing. Members of 2 rival gangs, IV, the Crips and the Bloods, were among the crowd. Police say at least 5 shooters opened fire. Over 100 shell casings were later recovered, and one of the weapons was a Glock modified with a switch to fire automatically. 6 people were killed. 3 of them, Sergio Harris, 38, Joshua Hoylukesi, 32, and Devazia Turner, 29, were believed to be gang members involved in the gunfight. But the other 3 were innocent bystanders: Jontea Alexander, just 21 years old, Melinda Davis, 57, and 2 one-year-old Yamiel Martinez Andrade. 12 others were wounded. Martin himself was shot during the chaos and taken to the hospital, where he was later arrested. On the 20th of April 2022, he was booked into the Sacramento County Main Jail. Alongside his brother, Dandre Martin, and another suspect, Montula Payton, he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, illegal possession of a machine gun, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. The district attorney's office announced in 2023 it would not seek the death penalty but would pursue life without parole. During the preliminary hearings in early 2024, Martin appeared in court wearing jail attire, sitting silently as prosecutors described his role in the bloodshed. His public defender insisted he was fighting to defend his innocence. That fight ended abruptly. On the 8th of June 2024, at just 29 years old, Martin was found unresponsive in his cell. The coroner ruled his death an accidental methadone overdose. Investigators believe he obtained the drug from another inmate in exchange for money sent through Cash App. The shooting left Sacramento shaken. President Joe Biden and Governor Gavin Newsom both condemned the violence, calling for stricter gun control measures. Candlelight vigils honored the victims, and the Sacramento Kings basketball team held a moment of silence. Victims' families filled the courtroom wearing shirts with photographs of their loved ones, demanding justice that never came. From this case, several lessons stand out. First, early release without adequate rehabilitation can return dangerous individuals to the streets. Second, illegal firearms, especially modified ones, turn disputes into massacres within seconds. And third, public spaces become battlegrounds when systemic gang violence is left unchecked. In the end, Smiley Martin never faced a jury. His death behind bars closed his case but left open the wounds of families and a city still searching for answers. Number 7. Derlyn Threats. A quiet morning in a suburban California neighborhood ended in screams, chaos, and one of the most brutal murders San Diego County had ever seen. Derlyn Ray Threats, born in 1981, grew up between a father who served in the Marine Corps and a mother consumed by addiction. By his teenage years, he was already entangled in crime, arrested for armed robbery at 15, and later convicted for stealing weapons from Camp Pendleton's armory. By 24, married and a stepfather, he appeared settled. But on the 1st of September 2005, that image collapsed in shocking violence. That morning, 4-year-old Carolyn Neville dropped her son at school before heading home. Threats broke into her house, intending to steal video games. When Neville unexpectedly returned, he ambushed her. The struggle spilled across the 2-story home. Prosecutors said the attack lasted 20 minutes, escalating with horrifying cruelty. Threats retrieved a pair of garden shears from the garage and inflicted dozens of wounds. Neville briefly escaped, but he dragged her back inside. She suffered more than 70 stab wounds, 47 to her head, face, and neck, many inflicted while she was alive. Neighbors called 911 as her screams echoed through the street. Deputies arrived to find Threats fleeing over a backyard fence, shoeless and soaked in blood. They captured him nearby, carrying a stun gun and a bloody stick. The case moved quickly. In December 2009, the trial began at the San Diego Superior Court in Vista. The jury deliberated less than a month before convicting Threats of first-degree murder, robbery, and burglary, with special circumstances, murder during robbery, murder during burglary, and murder by torture. On the 4th of December 2009, jurors recommended the death penalty. Judge K. Michael Kirkman imposed the sentence in August 2010, calling it the most aggravated, callous torture of a victim this court has ever seen. Threats' wife, Isabel, insisted he was innocent, while defense attorneys blamed a neighbor. But the jury was unmoved. The victim's husband, Stephen Neville, spoke directly to Threats in court. "I'll not rest comfortably until I see you take your last breath. My son will grow up without his mother. That scar will never heal." The brutality of the crime shocked the community. Prosecutors described it as sadistic, while the victim's family found only partial closure in the death sentence. Though California's moratorium on executions means Threats remains on death row at San Quentin, the conviction stands as one of San Diego's most notorious cases. From tragedies like this, sobering lessons emerge. First, burglary can erupt into violence when offenders are cornered. Second, communities must report suspicious activity before crime escalates. Third, unresolved trauma and prior criminal behavior often foreshadow extreme violence if left unchecked. The murder of Carolyn Neville left a husband without a wife and a child without a mother, and it left her community grappling with the fragility of safety within their own homes. It is a haunting reminder: danger sometimes enters through the front door uninvited, and vigilance is often the only barrier between routine life and irreversible loss. Number 8. Ivan Jerome Hill. A stretch of freeway in California became the silent witness to a series of murders that would later define a killer's legacy. Ivan Jerome Hill, born in Los Angeles in 1961, grew up in an environment marked by poverty and violence. His father, known for aggression, once shot Hill's mother in the face on Christmas Day 1968. By the age of 10, Hill was forced into the role of caretaker for his siblings. Though he once captained his high school football team, his future unraveled as drug addiction and petty crime consumed him. Between 1986 and 1994, Hill murdered at least 8 women, earning the grim nicknames the 60 Freeway Killer and the 60 Slayer. He targeted vulnerable women, often those struggling with addiction or sex work, lured them late at night, and strangled them with his hands or makeshift ligatures. Some victims were left bound, partially clothed, or gagged. Their bodies were dumped along a 30-mile stretch of the Pomona Freeway, transforming an ordinary highway into a corridor of horror. The killings escalated in late 1993. Within just 10 weeks, 6 women were murdered: Betty Sue Harris, Roxanne Brooks Bates, Helen Ruth Hill, Donna Goldsmith, Cheryl Sayers, and Deborah Denise Brown. After the final murder, Hill taunted authorities with chilling calls to 911. For nearly a decade, Hill eluded capture. In 1994, he was imprisoned on robbery charges, and only in 2003 did a DNA sample taken in custody link him directly to the unsolved murders. Prosecutors presented what they described as overwhelming forensic evidence tying Hill to 8 killings, with suggestions of more. His trial began in October 2006 in Los Angeles County Superior Court. After weeks of testimony, jurors convicted him of 6 first-degree murders. On the 21st of March 2007, Judge Larry P. Fiedler sentenced him to death, citing the brutality and the special circumstances of multiple murders. In 2009, Hill pleaded guilty to 2 additional murders from the 1,980 seconds, further sealing his fate. At sentencing, families of the victims delivered powerful statements. The daughter of Donna Goldsmith looked Hill in the eye. "I hate you. I hope you rot in hell." Prosecutors portrayed him as a predator who deliberately hunted women. His defense argued drug addiction drove his compulsions, but Hill himself admitted in a letter to family, "I knew this day would come when they came with the DNA samples." The case drew attention not only for its cruelty but also for its exposure of racial bias and crime reporting. Critics noted how Hill's victims, mostly women of color, received far less media coverage than other cases involving white female victims. From this tragedy, key lessons emerge. Vulnerability invites predators, making personal safety a constant priority. Communities must hold systems accountable for tracking repeat offenders. Finally, technology like DNA forensics remains one of the most powerful tools in solving cold cases. The legacy of the 60 freeway murders remains a stark reminder: evil does not hide in shadows alone, it can ride alongside us on the very roads we travel every day. Number 9. Anthony McKnight. On the quiet streets of Oakland in the mid-1980 seconds, a predator was on the move, searching for victims in the shadows of everyday life. Anthony McKnight, born in 1954, seemed to many like an ordinary man, a former member of the U.S. Army and Navy, stationed at Alameda Naval Air Station. He married in 1983 and became a father. To friends, he was known as lively, even friendly. But beneath the surface, McKnight carried a violent past. An arrest for attempted rape in 1982 placed him on law enforcement's radar, even if it didn't result in conviction. Between September and December of 1985, McKnight embarked on a killing spree that would claim the lives of 5 young women: Betty Lynn Stewart, Diane Stone, Talita Dixon, Monique Franchone Davis, and Beverly Ann Bryant. Their bodies were discovered in secluded locations across Oakland, Emeryville, Berkeley, and Richmond. The attacks were savage, some victims stabbed, others beaten with blunt objects, one with her throat slit. Alongside the murders, McKnight committed a string of non-fatal assaults, rapes, stabbings, and attempted strangulations. By January 1986, 3 survivors identified him in a photograph lineup, leading to his arrest. In 1987, he was convicted of 11 felonies tied to those attacks and sentenced to 63 years in prison. Yet, the murders remained unsolved, lingering as cold cases while families searched for answers. It wasn't until the late 1990 seconds that forensic science caught up to McKnight. With DNA profiling advancing and CODIS expanding, investigators re-examined the evidence. By 1999, DNA collected from the crime scenes pointed directly to McKnight, already behind bars. Alameda County prosecutors moved forward with charges for the 5 unsolved murders. His trial opened in August 2008. Prosecutors presented DNA evidence they called overwhelming, describing McKnight as a sociopath who patrolled Oakland streets, hunting vulnerable young women. McKnight pleaded not guilty, insisting he never met the victims. But on the 17th of September 2008, a jury convicted him on all counts of first-degree murder, with 5 special circumstances: 3 during the course of rape, 1 during sodomy, and 1 for multiple murders. On October 20, jurors recommended death, and on November 17, Judge Larry Goodman imposed the sentence, agreeing that the aggravating factors far outweighed any mitigation. In the courtroom, 9 family members of victims spoke. Their grief was raw. McKnight was sent to San Quentin's death row, where he remained until the 17th of October 2019, when he was found unresponsive in his cell at age 65. California's death penalty moratorium meant he would likely never face execution, but his conviction stood as a landmark example of how DNA technology solved long-cold cases. The story carries lessons for all of us. First, predators often blend into normal life. Trust your instincts when danger feels close. Second, technology is powerful, but justice can be delayed for decades. Third, survivors speaking up can be the key to stopping further violence. McKnight's case reminds us that evil doesn't always look like a monster. It can wear the face of a neighbor, a coworker, or even a friend. Number 10. Kevin Cooper. On a summer night in 1983, a family home in Chino Hills, California, became the site of a massacre so shocking that even seasoned investigators struggled to describe the scene. The man at the center of this case is Kevin Cooper, born Richard Goodman in 1958. By 25, he had a long record of burglary, escape attempts, and violent crime. Just 2 days before the murders, he walked away from the California Institution for Men, a minimum security prison in Chino, and hid in a vacant house just 125 yards from the Ryan family home. On the 4th of June 1983, Douglas and Peggy Ryan, both 41, their 10-year-old daughter Jessica, and 1-year-old houseguest Christopher Hughes were brutally murdered. 8-year-old Josh Ryan survived with his throat slit. The victims had been hacked and stabbed with multiple weapons, over 144 wounds in total. A sheriff's deputy later said the house looked like a battlefield, a scene of unimaginable violence. The next day, the family station wagon was found missing, and Cooper was already on the run. He checked into a hotel in Tijuana, Mexico, then boarded a sailboat with a couple he had befriended. Nearly 2 months later, he was arrested off the coast of Santa Barbara after another woman accused him of rape. By 1985, prosecutors had built their case. Cooper escaped, armed himself with a hatchet and knife, crept into the Ryan home, and slaughtered 4 people. A jury convicted him on the 19th of February 1985, and 3 months later he was sentenced to death. Judge Charles W. Froelich described the murders as the most vicious and callous he had ever seen. But the case never faded. Almost immediately, questions of misconduct emerged. Evidence pointing to other suspects, a set of bloody coveralls, a missing hatchet, eyewitness accounts of multiple white or Latino men, was dismissed or destroyed. Even the prison warden testified that shoe prints at the crime scene did not match prison-issued shoes, a fact hidden from the jury. Over the years, federal judges sharply criticized the handling of the case. 5 Ninth Circuit judges wrote that the state of California may be about to execute an innocent man. New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof called it one of the clearest examples of wrongful conviction on death row. Governors Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom both ordered further DNA testing, keeping his execution on hold. The victims' families, however, remain steadfast. Josh Ryan, the sole survivor, has spoken in court, saying, "I really want him to die," insisting Kevin Cooper is guilty. Christopher Hughes's father called delays in execution unfathomable. From this case, 3 urgent lessons emerge. First, flaws in evidence handling can alter the course of justice forever. Second, the death penalty carries irreversible risks when doubt exists. Third, high-profile advocacy can pressure leaders to revisit even decades-old convictions. The Kevin Cooper case reveals the fragile line between justice and error, reminding us that truth in the courtroom is never immune from human failure. Each story you've just seen proves how fragile safety truly is, and how thin the line can be between ordinary life and tragedy. But these are not just stories of killers, they are warnings written in blood, lessons carved into history. And the question remains, how many more are still out there, undiscovered, waiting? If you don't want to miss the next chilling chapter, make sure you subscribe to Justice Reversed and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to uncover the truths we reveal, truths that mainstream headlines often leave behind. Stay vigilant, stay aware, and never forget, justice delayed is danger repeated.